Hi, I'm Bob Liffords, and welcome to episode 13 of How to Make Your Own Video Game, Missile Command. In episode 12, we showed how to use inheritance to inherit the properties of a class in building another class, and we used the targeted object to build a building class, a ship class, and a missile class, and then an explosion. And as we showed the last time, I'll bring up the game. We have buildings at the bottom, missiles coming down, or ships coming down from the top, and I can fire off and make explosions. Now, at the moment, there's no interaction between these objects. We have the buildings falling randomly and the ships coming down and blowing up when they hit the ground. So let's add the interactions that'll make this a much more interesting video game. So we're going to do that by starting with the ship. Now, at the moment, the ship uses the redraw function that's in the targeted object itself. So here's my targeted object, and here is the redraw function. So we're going to modify this redraw function, which you've easily done after you've inherited it, by actually adding inside the ship object itself a new redraw function. And what we're going to do is we're going to take from the original. This is the only thing we need because we know the ship is just a two-pointed XY coordinate. It doesn't have 4 points. So I'm going to go ahead and add that line here and change the object to self.objects element 0. Remember, when we create the ship, we're having a single drawn object, which is the ship image, and we're going to draw that on the canvas. So this now replaces the inherited code. I'm going to redraw it so that I can make some changes. The change I want to make is we're drawing a ship at the coordinate XY, and we're drawing it at self.end. That is where the object is currently residing. It started at start and it's ending it at target, and the point where it's at right now is actually self.end. So what we want to know is, did we hit something? And the way we're going to find out if we hit something, in this case the ship could hit a building, we're going to basically use self.canvas dot, and what we want to do is we want to use find overlapping. So we're going to find overlapping objects, and we want to know what they're overlapping. We want to find all the objects that are basically at X and Y, and I'm going to move the Y value up by half of the ship height. Ship image dot height over 2. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that the center of the ship, a little bit behind the ship, okay? And we're going to do that at a single point. So I'm going to take this and repeat it. Normally it's drawing a box. What's overlapping on this box, okay? And so what that's going to give me is any objects on the canvas that are in a line behind the center of the ship. So when the ship hits the building, gets down inside the building by half its height, then we should find an object. Now, for each of those objects that we found that we hit, we need to do the following. We need to find out if the thing we hit is in self.shape to self. Remember, we created a shape to self dictionary, and every time we create an object on the canvas, that's one of our classes, either ships or buildings or missiles. We record the item we created on the canvas and then map it to itself. So if the hit, which is the object on the canvas, is in this array, then it's one of our defined targeted object devices. And if it's one of the objects, then the thing is we want to make sure that it is an instance. So the self dot shape of the hit. So that, sorry, not hit, but hot but hit. So that is actually the object that that we hit that's in this list. We don't know if it's a building. This says, is it an instance of building? It might have been another ship. 2 ships might have crossed, right? And so if that's the case, then in that case, we want to find the building object, which is this. That's the building object that we hit. That was the number on the canvas. Remember, every object on the canvas is just a number. We want to take that thing and we want it to move, right? Because once the ship hits the building, we want it to move. And then the other thing that we want to do is we want to tell it the self dot end dot target, the location of the ship that we're trying to head towards is now going to be where it currently is. Okay? So what that's going to say is that we were headed to the ground, but now that we hit a building, we're going to make the target where we are. And so that's going to end the ship. So if we do that, let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So I've got ships coming down in a minute here. I can shoot up missiles. And when the ship hits a building, we have one small problem. We forgot to remove this statement. This is the statement that we added just to make the buildings move after some random time. And we don't want them to move anymore unless we hit them with a ship. So let's try that. So now buildings should be fine unless they get hit by a ship. I can still make my missiles. They don't interact with the ships yet. But watch what happens when that ship hits the building falls down. When this ship hits that building, the building falls down. It gets a little bit farther than the top. We move the center down a little bit, so it kind of really hits the building and then it comes down because the shape of the building is a rectangle. But any place the building gets hit, it should fall down, and then the ship explodes. So that is kind of what we wanted, right? Now let's add the interaction between the ships and the explosions. So we're going to do that by going down here to the explosions. We already have a redraw command. We don't need to copy it. And we're going to do the same trick. We're going to say X and Y are equal to self.end. That is, in this case, the explosion isn't moving, it's growing. It's self.start. So the starting location is where the circle starts to form and gets bigger. So where that circle starts to start, now we want to find out if we hit a ship. We want to find out if there's any ships in there. So self.canvas dot, and in this case, for the explosions, we want to do enclosed. So we're going to find enclosed. So we're now going to draw a rectangle and we're going to find things inside of it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say X, which is where we started, minus dx to the left. Okay. And then we want to subtract half the height of a ship. So ship image dot width divided by 2. And then we want to go to the y coordinate minus dx minus the ship image height divided by 2. And that gets us the one point of the box. And then we want to do the opposite corner. And the opposite corner is this same thing. And paste it there with Control C and Control V. And now this wants to be plus, 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 plus. So we're taking the point where the middle of the circle, we're going left and right by the delta X. That's going to draw the basically be the height of the size of the circle. And then we're going to increase the size of the circle by half the height of the ship. So that the ship has to be clearly, we can nick the ship and still catch it. Okay? So now we're finding objects on the canvas that are inside the circle being drawn by the exploding circle. And for all of the things we hit in hit ships, we have to find out if they're ships. So if hit is in self.shape. I can't spell self. If it's in that list, so it means it's one of our other targeted objects, and it is an instance, and this is self dot of the hit value. So this is an array. This is the thing we hit. So that gives me the object. Our object we created, we hit. Is that a ship. So if it's a ship, so it's on our list, it is a ship, then what I want to do? Well, in that case, this object itself wants to be deleted. And don't forget to put the parentheses on the end. It's a function call. Okay? So that's what we want to do. All right? So we're going to look for, inside the circle, the bomb, the explosion, we're going to look for any ships that are inside, and we're going to delete the ship. Okay? Let's give that a try. So now, when the ships come down from the top, I should be able to shoot up at them, and if I time it right, I can blow up the ship and keep it from hitting the buildings. And now we have a game, right? If I miss and the ship gets through, it'll make the building fall down. If I'm good and catch them all, right? And you can change the speed of these if you don't know how they're going. But basically, I'm trying to get my explosions to take out the ship. And that's pretty much what we want for the game, with one exception.
So you can't really have a video game without some sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to the top of our program, and we are going to import WinSound, import PlaySound, send async. Okay, now this will work on a Windows box. If you're working on a Mac, there's other things you have to look on the internet and figure a way to do it. But import WinSound, from WinSound, import PlaySound, and send async. And then what we want to do is when we get down here to where we're having an explosion, when we start the explosion, the circle expanding, and we do the initialization here, right before that, we want to basically say, look, let's do a play sound, and then we're going to grab a sound that is explosion.wave in images and sounds. So play sound, images and sounds, explosion.wave asynchronously. That means it'll play it more than once. It won't play, and then that's all you can do until you get it. So it should play it again. So by adding that, when the explosion starts, we should get some sound. Let's give it a try. So now I get an explosion. And if I hit the ships, now it's not able to play totally asynchronously on a Windows 11 now. And if I do a lot of bombs, they kind of click, click, click. You only get the final one. But at least you're getting some sound. My apologies for the explosion noise. So one thing I do is the ability to change this explosion to squish. And if I do that, now your parents won't be quite so mad with all the blowing up noises in your ears, and now you get a squish, like you're stepping on bugs. Okay? And there's one other final thing I'd like to do just to clean it up a little bit. Down here at the bottom, after we create these images, I am going to, before we put the buildings in, I am going to create a gun stand, which is creating an oval. This is the location of that oval. It's going to be silver. And then I'm going to create a gun, which is at the right location, and it's a line that is got a width to it, okay, 40 width. So I'm going to use that. And now what I need to do is I need to have a function which is on a motion. So I'm going to add that motion command. The first thing I need to do is let me get another object from our images. And after we create this guy here, I'm going to put in a bullseye, which is a photo image, images and sounds, bull.gif. So there's a file over here that is bull.gif, and that's going to give us a target. And I'll show you what that means. So now what we're going to do down here is we're going to create a function that is, I'll put it down here. That's fine. It's a function that is when there's motion on the mouse. And when there's motion on the mouse, we get an event. I'm going to get the XY coordinate from the event. And my target that I just created, where did I put it? The image that I created, which is bullseye. Okay. Bullseye. So I'm going to move the bullseye to the coordinate where the mouse is moving. And then my gun, the end of my gun is going to be at the targeted object. And it's basically, I'm going to set it up 40 pixels away from aiming at the XY coordinate. And then I'm going to redraw the gun. And I'll show you what this does. So what this does now is the following. And there's one thing I forgot is that we need to bind motion to the function motion. So whenever the mouse moves, we're going to call this function. We're going to change the bullseye to the coordinate where the mouse is, and then we're going to aim the gun at the mouse. And I'll show you how that looks now. So now I have a gun. You can see that it's aiming where I'm aiming, and the only thing that's missing is my bullseye. Hang on one second. Sorry, after I grabbed the image itself and I made a bullseye image, I forgot to create the actual target that's gonna move around. So here is my target. I'm gonna create an image on the canvas, and it doesn't matter where I put it because it's actually gonna move down here. This should be my target. My target. And so now, once I've done that, we get the following. I have a target. And then I have the missile launching. You notice at the bottom here, the line is coming up from the bottom of the gun. So we'll fix that with a one-click line, which is that when we click and we create the missile, we don't want to start the missile at this coordinate. We want to start the missile at mygun.end. So it wants to start at the end of the gun. And so now when we do that, we get the following. So now the thing launches from the end of the gun. You see how that works? So that's kind of what we wanted. That's pretty good. So I restarted, so I've got that working out pretty nice. The only problem is my sounds aren't playing that great when I click a lot. I don't know quite how to fix that. But that's pretty much the video game that we wanted. There's a lot of additions we'll make. In the next episode, I'll just go through a code review and talk about some of the things you can add on your own. But that's looking pretty good.